Yeah, I heard they'll go get you.
Yeah.
Then you
Oh, the
keep-
current?
Yeah, and then you keep going, right?
Yeah, that's the thing. There were people that overshot the exit by half a mile and had to run all the way back. And then it's a half a mile from swim exit to transition. So they had to run a mile.
Nice.
That's 800.
How do you even yeah?
That was rude. I know. And it doesn't even count towards your run.
It was a current. It was supposed to be,
Oh, man.
they had forecasted it to be about, what, two knots? Which is a little bit, it's current.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
3.6 knots. 3.6 knots race day. I was like, great.
Yeah, I did tennis Olympic distance in Tennessee or Nashville in June, and it was I don't know what river it is, but
Is it probably is it the Tennessee River?
oh, that makes sense.
There's a current in that one. I love that.
Anyway, so the fastest Olympic swim was 3 minutes. That's how fast the current was.
So,
Yeah. So
The
the
1
person-
mile
Yeah.
swim in 3 minutes?
Yes.
Right.
So
so that's
I don't even
That's-
know how you can like stay informed. in
so
that.
that's 20 miles an hour
That's like a tumble.
yeah.
on the swim.
You know, jump in, jump out.
Yeah, you're just
That's like your
tumbling.
swim speed would be faster than your bike speed
Yeah.
I don't
potentially.
think your arms could keep up with that. I'm Superman.
Imagine just riding a time trial bike over the water. That's basically what it is.
So so you have to like start going in like almost right away, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, so I started going in, but I got sucked in and I went past the swim exit.
That's my
Really?
Because you
Really?
And then you couldn't swim back.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, there was no
You missed it.
physical way.
You
I
mean
maybe-
you can't swim 20 miles an hour, Julian?
So, I tried, of course, because you think, oh God, like, and then I look up, I'm like farther away, and so all these, and I heard, one of my other, actually it was one of my teammates behind me going, I can't get back, I can't, she was yelling and screaming and whatever, and then, the boys around you, do you need help, and then I actually ended up, I ended up like swimming or going into the edge, the water's edge, and I grabbed some trees, and I sort of pulled myself back to.
Like the rope in quicksand.
Yeah, I pulled myself back to where there was like a concrete barrier thing that I could get up on and walk back to the swim start.
Did you make a long distance call?
It was they was set up to catch people who were floating down.
A net?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Crab net.
In a net.
A buoy with
Okay, we're gonna catch everybody.
that Rockford swim, I don't know, was fast.
Yeah, well, so river swims in general, the trick, and like sometimes people go off course, they don't realize like where they are in the river. But any river swim, the current is always the strongest in the middle of the river. And a lot of people ended up, like a lot of nervous swimmers, for Rockford, you start on one side of the river and you end up on the other bank of the river for the exit. And at the swim start, they have you kind of almost going like straight across the river. So a lot of people basically just kept going straight across the river, and they got onto the river's edge on the other side and then swam down. But the current is not that strong if you're on the river's edge. And I did the Ironman course briefing talk about the swim course at the expo a couple days before. And I was telling everybody, like, if you want to have the best swim, swim right down the middle. And that's what I did. And I swam pretty easy and swam like 5 minutes faster than other people. So yeah, placement is important, any river swim.
Were
So
you in the middle? Were you in the middle?
I don't even know where I was. I blinked and it was like time to get out. I was seriously, it was like
The Tennessee River is
it was
fast.
nuts.
But they can also control the current based on the dams, so they can like close up usually 2 to 4 days.
You're talking
Damn,
Chattanooga?
if I hadn't
Yeah, the swim was canceled.
My swim would have
I've
been
done
amazing.
the half twice.
Yeah, last year's half was canceled.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
It's a fun race.
Cool.
But is that where you were? No, you were in Nashville.
Yeah, it was an Olympic. It's one they've had like for 25 years, I feel like they said.
Is that the waterfront?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's been over 25
yeah,
years.
you're on a boat and you jump off the boat. It's kind of cool. It was a fun destination, event.
Cool. Well, I guess I'll do a little talk. We'll get things going.
This one.
Just make sure. I'm gonna try to record this. So for people who couldn't make it, it's not a ton of info, but we'll kind of go through it. If anyone does want to interact or be recorded, I have a microphone, so hopefully it won't record you if you're just talking socially in the background. But if we do like Q&A at the end, I'll give a microphone in case anybody wants to, say anything. So, yeah, I guess just to get started, I'm Coach Chris, for those of you who don't know, a friend of Jillian, the owner of the shop. And I also work for the Chicago Triathlon for Super Tri, but I'm a full-time coach, so I get involved in a lot of different things. And Jillian invites me to come and join in these tri-socials to bring up different topics throughout the year. We haven't yet planned the new year, but we are always looking for feedback. So if you guys have ideas on things that you'd like to see, let us know. So we'll do different triathlon clinics throughout the year, half social, half clinic. Today the theme is the Norwegian Method. So basically, if you haven't been paying attention to long course triathlon, the Ironman World Championship for the men was in Nice, France this year in September. Sorry, I don't know what my phone is doing. And then for the women, it was in Kona this year, and both the men's race and the women's race were won by Norwegians. And so a lot of people started wondering, like, what are all these Norwegians doing that is, helping them to dominate the triathlon scene? And most notably on the men's race, 2 former Ironman world champions were both Norwegian, and the newest one, Kasper Stornes, he won as well. So all 3 of them now have been Ironman world champions, and they swept the podium, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd place. So true domination. And on the women's side, well, the 2 leading women succumbed to the heat and dropped out. The woman who was in 3rd place ended up winning the whole race as well. And so both the women's race and the men's race were won by Norwegians. And a lot of talk has been coming out around their training. But over years, we've seen Norwegians do very well in endurance sports. So for a small country to do so well, people always wonder, what do they do? And there's a lot of things that these athletes did in particular, which I'll talk about a little bit, at least from what I've been able to see from a coaching perspective. So this is kind of my perspective on them without actually interviewing them or asking them things, but just looking up some of what they have done. Couple interesting stats too, if you really want to get into the weeds. I focus a lot on metabolic testing and figure out how to help people pace races, how to fuel for races. And one of the things that helped Kasper do very well in particular, one of his partners, his fueling partner, posted his nutrition plan after the race. So if you're curious, like, how did he fuel that well? He did 182 grams of sugar per hour. So that's over a gram for every pound of body weight per hour, which is a lot. And about 1,000 milliliters in terms of fluid per hour as well. So large amount of fluid, large amount of carbs is kind of what the top level athletes are doing these days. We're going to talk about this and hopefully get some takeaways for ourselves too. So actually they posted info if you're interested in the fueling stuff. Kasper got 3rd place at the Ironman European Championships in Frankfurt, and they posted his fueling for that Ironman. So he went from under 150 grams an hour to just a couple months later doing over 180 grams an hour, and that helped him win the Ironman World Championship. So fueling was a big part of it. I also cyber stalked some of his training and looked at what he did on Strava, because some pros share their data, some don't. But if you're curious, over the course of his training season, this is how many hours of training he did per month and the different months of the year. He peaked about 2 months before the event, doing 133 hours of training in a month. And that's just what he has posted on Strava. So he might do more outside of that, like cross training, strength training, all that might not be logged in there. But throughout the whole year, he averaged 20 to 30 hours of training a week. The fueling, like I mentioned, he did 182 grams per hour, and he weighs 171 pounds. But his background, just like the other Norwegians, they all started on the national team, so they were supported kind of by their government-funded. You know, the Norwegians are really, really big in winter sports, like Nordic skiing and whatnot. So they have a very well-developed, sports program, but they also have a lot of research universities that do a lot in that space. So the Norwegian CERG, the Cardiac Exercise Research Group, is well known for having published a lot on like VO2 max training and things like that. So they have the sports science side of things supported, they have their government support, and then they have these athletes who've been literally from teenage years on, been training for years and years and years and years. So it did a huge aerobic base to get to that point. So it's not just fueling, but obviously one component of what a lot of the Norwegians do is very high volume training. Most pros might do like 20 hours of training a week. These guys build up to over 30 hours of training. So that's one component. I also put as a shameless plug for the bike shop as well. Interestingly enough, both at least on the men's side, both of the Norwegians happen to use bikes made by Giant, and Giant makes a lot of the bikes here at BFF Bikes. And Live is Giant's women's specific brand. So they have Giant and Live are both owned by Giant. And Giant as a whole is the biggest bike manufacturer in the world. They make a lot of bikes and bike parts for not just themselves, but other companies as well.
Does what's her face, that one Kona, does she have a live?
No, the female Norwegian, no, but maybe now she will be after joining these two. But yeah, Cadex is also the brand of Giant for their high performance cycling parts. So wheels and aero bars and stuff like that. So Christian Blumenfeld had a Cadex specific bike, which always reminds me of the Divi bike, just because of how their frame is set up. It's the Aero Divi bike, I like to call it. And then Gustav Eden, he has the Giant time trial bike, which this bike right here in front of us is the women's specific version of this bike in particular. But this is his setup with all his bottles and stuff like that. So the one thing that I, at least from a coaching perspective, look at when I look at time trial bikes, especially on races that they, on the men's side, they did Nice, is a very hilly and mountainous course. So one of the things that the Norwegians had as potentially one of their competitive advantages is the Giant time trial bikes are very light. Most time trial bikes are actually pretty heavy, well over 20 pounds. So having a light bike, and obviously the Cadex wheels are very, very light as well. So I think they probably had a little bit of a weight savings advantage in general, but you'd have to look at all the pros to really factor that in. But yeah, so the Live and the Giant, they just came out with these time trial bikes. As far as I know, I think it was this summer or earlier this year. And it was they finally replaced, they used to have rim brake bikes and now they're all disc. So this is the first ever, I think, women's specific time trial bike with disc brakes, as far as I know. So anyhow, so we can talk about that later, but that was one thing that might help them. So a lot of people wonder, what is the Norwegian method? And it's always like a little bit of a mystery. People talk about in the triathlon side, the Norwegian hype train, and they always overhype the Norwegians, but hey, they just swept the podium. So they deserve all the hype that they've been getting. So a lot of people wonder, okay, what is the Norwegian method? And there's a lot of books out there. There's a lot of actually pretty well documented breakdowns of what the Norwegian method is. But ultimately, they do a lot of different things at the end of the day. some people wonder, is it more zone 2 training? Because that's a big focus in endurance training, is are they doing zone 2? Some people wonder, is it 80-20? And that's where you do 80% of your volume in zone 2, 20% at higher intensities like VO2 max and whatnot. But it's actually, I would argue it's actually the opposite. And I'll talk about that in a minute. But one other thing that they do a lot of is what they call double threshold days. So to get more volume in, they do 2 what they call threshold workouts. And it's basically a strategy to log more volume. So if you want to scale your training volume, how do you do it without getting injured? And so they get very precise. They do a lot of lactate testing in general. I'd say the Norwegians of any country or any national level team, they've been doing more research and more lactate testing than anybody else. And what they talk about when they do double threshold days is doing actually not threshold intensity like we think of it, like we think of FTP on the bike, like functional threshold power. That's a high racing intensity. They actually keep their lactate levels typically below these 2 points. So they talk about, when they say threshold, they're talking about 2 different things completely, a low threshold and a high threshold, what we would call more zone 2 and zone 4. And they periodize it. So they might in the morning do a low intensity workout because you're more carb depleted in the morning, you're more dehydrated as well. So you don't have as much energy stores to use in the morning. So generally if they do a double threshold day, they'll do their morning workout where they try to keep their lactate levels below 2 millimoles. Now, if you're someone who uses heart rate monitors, that would be true zone 2, like 60% of your max heart rate, or what would be around, if you've ever heard of the MAF method or the MAF formula, 180 minus your age is an estimated heart rate for that. And that's where your body burns more fat as a fuel source. So it makes you a more efficient athlete. It builds your endurance. And then in the evening, they'll generally do their zone 2 workout. And this is, if you've ever seen like the Orange Theory boot camps, zone 4. Am I saying zone 2 again? Sorry, like saying both very quickly. So zone 4 is more higher intensity. That's your racing zone. And Orange Theory, like the boot camp cross training style of classes, those have generally been, their Orange Theory was to log more time in the orange zone, which would be right below the red zone, right below your threshold. So they avoid going over 4 millimoles of lactate or over your threshold heart rate. So they do a lot of training below threshold. They might not do VO2 max work. And by staying below that threshold, the body is more controlled. You don't decouple, meaning like your heart rate doesn't start going up, 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 up. It always stays steady. So it's a way to be more conservative with higher intensity training, ultimately. And that's how they log more volume. They do an easy morning workout, a harder intensity, but not an all-out type of workout. And they do that twice a week. So they usually do 2 double threshold days during the week. But if you look at Casper's training, I think the week before his Ironman, I was showing it to Shelly. He did over 20 or 30 hours of training, I think it was. And he did double threshold workouts almost every day of the week. To get to that 30 hours of training volume. So it's basically just a way to train and really know your numbers and make sure you're not blowing yourself up and having a very specific purpose to different workouts that you're doing. So it's essentially, when people talk about like the 80-20, which is like a polarized model, you do a lot of zone 2, like low intensity, and then zone 5, high intensity. Norwegian Method, you're actually doing most of your training between those points. So in that sense, it's actually the complete opposite of kind of traditional polarized training. It's more of what we might call sweet spot intensity. You're staying below your threshold and doing more sweet spot workouts. So it's very limited or almost no VO2 max or high intensity in zone 5. And you can argue that, and I'll talk a little bit more about that as well. But the main point is that they focus a lot on precision. Like they know their numbers, they test their lactate. They do a lot of other things too, like altitude training. And oftentimes when people go to altitude, they struggle using heart rate as a training metric because Oh, I got music playing. We have, and now the band. What is that? Just random music playing. All right. Anyhow, so it's just about being very, very precise with training, doing the right training right. Following workouts with more precision at the end of the day. But obviously, training 20 hours of training a week is probably not going to work for most of us. Like, we're not doing altitude training. We're probably none of us here are ever going to do 20 hours of training in a week. So the overall strategy of what they do is not necessarily something that does completely apply to what we do.
You own an altitude chamber.
Or you get an altitude chamber. The other thing that is important to understand whenever you hear information about the Norwegian method or training zones, there's always this kind of point of confusion. When Norwegians generally talk about Zone 2 training, and a lot of European countries and athletes, they use a 3-zone heart rate model. And so Zone 2 for them means anything between your thresholds. When we talk about Zone 2 training with a 5-zone model, Zone 2 is actually a little bit closer to what they would call lower intensity. So it's important anytime you're reading stuff, watching YouTube videos, reading books, know that Zone 2 might actually have a completely different definition. In our 5-zone model, which is what you see in like Garmin watches, you see in Training Peaks, a lot of training plan tools, Zone 2 is 60 to 70% of your max heart rate. With this model, the 3-zone model, this is basically anything between 60 to 90% of your max heart rate. Huge range. And so the Norwegian method is built around staying kind of between these two thresholds and doing a lot of volume in between these zones, which for us would actually probably, by definition, kind of more closely match what would be Zone 3 for us. So when they talk about Zone 2, they're actually technically talking more about what we would call Zone 3. So just know that whenever you're talking or watching YouTube videos about Zone 2, I found like literally podcasters, like 2 people talking about Zone 2, and I started listening to what they're saying, and they're actually talking about completely different things, because one of them is talking about a 3-zone model, one of them is talking about a 5-zone model. So always make sure that you know the context of who's talking and what they're talking about. So yeah, the Norwegian method, like I said, the morning workouts, the main difference is they look at staying in different coaches, like for track and field versus cross country versus triathlon. They might do these double threshold days to get more volume, and they use different numbers. So they might do around 2 millimoles or 2.5 millimoles. Some people stay right below 2 millimoles. So their first threshold workout is somewhere around there though, somewhere around 2 millimoles, either slightly above, slightly below, or right at it. And then their threshold workouts are usually done up to 4 millimoles, but usually closer to 3.5 millimoles. And so in terms of heart rate, if you want to think of these as heart rate, this would be doing workout in the 60% of max heart rate zone, so true Zone 2, and then doing just below your threshold, which would be Zone 4. So they do a lot of Zone 2 and Zone 4.
They're basically repeating the same workout?
No, but this is like a big meaty chunk of their training. Like if at least 2 or 3 days a week, this is kind of how they structure a lot of their volume. And the reason for that is, like I said, it's so that they can recover quicker from workouts and log more volume. That's the main goal of kind of the Norwegian method in general.
Not just to have fun.
Not just to have fun, yep. But we'll talk about that too, actually.
I know.
And so one phrase, you've seen this maybe, a lot of people, a lot of coaches, a lot of different places have mentioned this. This is a good kind of way to think about it, is it's better to be 10% undertrained, like not doing a lot of VO2 max work and just being a little more conservative, than to be 1% overtrained.
Tan.
Like you don't want to go, what's that?
Tan.
Then. Sorry, I put this together pretty quick.
In the car?
So the goal is just don't overtrain. And their whole training methodology is around using precision to avoid that. So that's kind of one of the things that they do.
Evening the same amount of time, or?
No, it can vary. I mean, that's all based on what they're doing. Like typically, what you would probably see is their morning sessions are longer endurance sessions, To log that volume, you need to keep it at lower intensity, and then the evening session will be shorter, an hour or so. But that might change throughout their season, be periodized based on what races they're training for. So the two, Gustav and Christian in particular, they've been trying to figure out the right formula to be able to switch their training between short course, draft legal, high intensity triathlon and long course. And Christian in particular has been trying to do both because he won the Olympic gold medal in Tokyo, I think it was, right? Yeah, and then he won the Ironman World Championships in St. George less than a year later. So people are like, how are you winning both the short distance and the long distance? And because he did that, they're saying okay, the hardest challenge is actually not going from short course to long course. A lot of people have done that. The challenge is going from long course back to short course. And so a lot of the idea around being able to change your training up with these different methodologies is still hotly contested. No one's really figured out the perfect formula.
But how did Casper do this almost daily the week before Nice?
Yeah, they got to use that. So his big volume training where he did 133 hours of training in a month, that was, I think, 2 months before Nice. And so a 20-hour training day for him was actually a 50% volume reduction.
Maybe the intensity also came down.
Yeah, yep. Actually, no, they did actually get a couple pretty high intensity sessions.
Well, it's that zone 2 workout that is much longer periodically. And then in the evening, because you've already gotten that, for lack of a better term, warm up, you're primed to perform for an hour and shut it down.
Yep. But yeah, I mean, like I said, 20 hours of training when you're tapering down from 30 hours, that's a 50% reduction. That's pretty common for a taper week. A lot of us, when we peak for a full Ironman, most of our athletes might do it at least a 10 to 16 hour day maybe, or 16-hour week, that week of your peak training. And then the week after that, you taper it down in half. You're doing 5 to 8 hours of training. And that's basically what he did. So it's just perspective. So if you want to train like a Norwegian, but apply it to regular everyday people, one of the main things to do is just have more precision. I'm biased because I do a lot of metabolic testing, but the idea is figuring out your heart rate zones, knowing where your threshold is so that you can train at the right intensity is what they do very well. So that's something any of us can replicate. And if you've never done a metabolic test, that's always a worthwhile investment to at least do it once, figure out where your heart rate zones should be set up. Most importantly, you want to know where you go anaerobic. So where does your body switch from burning more fat as a fuel source to burning more carbs? And if you're only ever going to test this once, I would recommend doing that as a running test versus a cycling test. If you're going to do it twice, then do it once in each discipline. Because that way you can see if you have any metabolic efficiency differences between bike and run.
How does illness, for lack of a better term, affect that test? I mean, does it have a really detrimental effect, or is it depending on the illness? Let's say I'm getting over a cold.
Yeah.
And it's been lingering, and then I'm going into that test, and I haven't really run over the past 2 weeks.
Yeah.
How does that affect the numbers?
Yeah. So ideally, never test if you're sick. But if that caused you to take your training volume down for a little bit, then if you were to test after that, when you do just a kind of a basic VO2 max test, we don't often look at or even care about your power or your pace. We're just correlating your heart rate to your metabolism. And so that might not actually change that much if you're a little bit off of higher volume training. That said, I usually recommend that if someone's going to do a VO2 max test on the run, that you want to do about at least 10K of training a week for 2 weeks beforehand. So don't take completely 2 weeks off and then just jump right into a test. At least get a little bit of a running base back under your legs before you do that actual test. So yeah, good question though. And then there's other tests too, like usually for the bike test, we sometimes do what we call a metabolic efficiency point test, or sometimes we call it a cycling economy or a fat max test. And that one is really designed more for figuring out that low end, like where is your zone 2, or where should your zone 2 be set up? Where do you burn the most fat? Where really is that first threshold for you? And then it builds you up to what we call the crossover point, where you're burning about 50% fat and carbs. So for the typical athlete, if you're going to plan out the perfect season for an Ironman and you could test multiple times, I would generally have someone do a VO2 max test on the run early in the season as you're starting your training, and then do a metabolic efficiency or fat max test on the bike as you're building into your peak bike training. So like 2 months maybe before your big race. And that way you've tested your zones, you've retested your zones, and this one you can actually use to help dial in your fueling planning as well. Now, if you had more time and you want to do an additional test, I'd also recommend a lactate test. That's what you see a lot of the Norwegians talk about more. They do all types of testing, but I don't always recommend lactate for a couple reasons. One, it's more invasive. We have to prick you and take a little blood prick every so often. It's more expensive. So usually I recommend lactate testing if you are going to use lactate on a regular basis yourself in your training. So if you are going to test your own lactate, then it might be worth doing a lactate test in a lab, and then you would go and do lactate testing throughout your own training or come back in a couple months later. But if you're not going to retest regularly, it might not be worthwhile to track that. You're probably better off just focusing on heart rate training. The other reason for that is lactate testing, we take a point in time sample, so we're only taking a data point every couple minutes, whereas with metabolic testing, oxygen exchange testing, we're getting data points every roughly 15 seconds or every breath. And so we get more data points and it's easier to see inflection points. But if you want to follow like textbook lactate testing and you want to know where am I under 2 millimoles, where am I under 4, and you want to get precise with that, we'll use that. I use lactate testing more with rowers than runners and cyclists because they focus more on power and pace and they don't use heart rate, and that's why we use lactate. And that's changed over the years. Lactate testing used to be a lot more popular. It used to be called the gold standard, but now the newer metabolic carts give us much better data. There's also other types of testing to consider. A lot of the Norwegians, they geek out. They put 20 different sensors on them. They do all sorts of lab testing if you follow them on YouTube and whatnot. But I would say for a typical triathlete, you also would value a lot, I think, from swim video analysis. If you've never done that, that's something to consider. So if you're planning out your year, yep. I'm actually doing some this Sunday if anyone wants to come to one of our group workouts. Bike fitting is probably the biggest thing. If you're spending the most time, if you're doing a long course triathlon, you're spending a lot of time on the bike, definitely get a bike fit. If you haven't done that, get it when you get a new bike, or if any fitness changes have happened, injury, range of motion limitations. If it's been a long time, it's worth doing a bike fit. If running is a weakness, I also recommend at some point doing a real running gait analysis, whether it's from a physical therapy perspective or a performance perspective. I use a tool called Run Easy, which is like a motion sensing pod that we put on your body while you run to get kind of more information that'll help us from a performance standpoint. And then nutrition testing too. So if diet and fueling is important to you, especially if you're trying to figure out not the fueling during training, but the nutrition aspects outside of training, so before and after your general diet basically, I would recommend the resting metabolic rate testing. That's what we use usually when people start tracking their macros, their macronutrients, want to dial in their fueling more. That's another test worth doing. So these are probably the most popular types of tests and assessments that we see triathletes in general do. So if you have any questions about them, I'm happy to geek out on that more. But anyhow, so if you want to train like a Norwegian and have a little more precision and do kind of the right things right, these are kind of the common themes. They do testing, training, and then they repeat that. So it doesn't mean you have to do lab testing. It just means find a way to assess yourself. So if you want your training zones tailored to you, do a lab test initially, but then find a way to reassess yourself as what I like to call a field test. Signing up for the turkey trot, a 5K. I know in the BFF runs that we do on Wednesday mornings here, once a month we try to encourage people to do a 5K time trial. And so we have that constant opportunity to double check our zones, see how our fitness is changing. That's what these guys are doing on a very consistent basis. The other thing that I would recommend, we might not be able to train like a crazy Norwegian doing 20 hours of training a week, but if you think about how we should do our training, I like to have people do kind of what we call periodization of your training. So as you build up for a long distance event, if you're doing a half Ironman, those longer course triathlons, you're going to be training for a longer period of time. And the Norwegian method definitely does not make sense when you're starting out your training volume. I would normally tell people to think about breaking your season up. If it's 6 months, the first theme for the first 2 months might be focused more on strength training. A lot of zone 2 training, lower intensity cardio, so that you have more energy to spend focusing on strength training. Strength, mobility, flexibility, build that solid base first. So if you haven't done that, focus on that. Then after that, once you have the strength to support your body and to support higher performance, this would be the time we call this fast before far. Do your speed work before you do the long endurance work. So if you want to do VO2 max intervals, if you want to do like high intensity indoor bike training, after a month or two, that is the perfect time to do it. You've built that muscle mass, now you can really push that fitness to the next level. After you've done that, that's when the Norwegian method would make more sense. So I color-coded this because this would be more zone 2 training, this would actually be more zone 5 training, and this would be more zone 3 and zone 4 training. So if you periodize kind of a typical training plan, it's called riding the rainbow. You just work through all the different intensities. So you're kind of shifting from one training methodology to another as your training volume goes up. And that's one way to think about if you do want to do some Norwegian style training, that would probably be your peak training phase. Also, look at your metabolic efficiency. This is something that we would want to improve over time. Whether you're doing that type of testing, the goal of all of this type of periodization and training, whether you're doing more zone 2 training, if you're doing volume increase, we should see your ability to hold a higher percentage of your max heart rate gradually improving over time. And your metabolic efficiency might start out in zone 2, but it moves up to zone 4. And that's why the Norwegians are able to race at these high intensities for a very long period of time. They've improved their metabolic efficiency from zone 2 to now be up all the way into zone 4. So they can race at 80 to 85% of their max heart rate almost all day long. But that takes time to build up to that level. The other thing you can do if you haven't done it before, just measure something. Have a metric, usually just tracking the volume, how many hours or how many miles a week you're doing. Or if you're using a training plan tool like Training Peaks tracks the training stress score, or Tri312 uses the normalized training stress, just a way to look at how much training you're doing. And the goal is just build that gradually over time, because there is a very direct correlation with volume and VO2 max. So if you want to improve your VO2 max, gradually bring your training volume up, and we'll see your VO2 max go up. I also recommend, if you are trying to get more precise with all this stuff, use a training plan tool that tracks compliance, meaning are you doing the right amount of training intensity in the right zone? And a lot of tools now have like a gamified way of scoring that. Being like, all right, you got enough heart rate training stress in this month. So Tranex is what they call training execution, is what they use on the Tri312 side for those half and full Ironman training plans. All right, so finally to wrap up, and then I'll turn it over to you guys, because I want to see if you guys have specific goals. But if you are going to set goals for the new year, we'll probably do a goal setting workshop at some point, whether December, January. But I always say, you don't have to be super crazy number focused all the time, but it's good to put pen to paper and just have a metric, have something, that you can measure that you want to improve. Whether it's volume that you want to bring up, look at how much volume you did last year. Look at Strava, Training Peaks, different training plan tools will tell you how many hours a week you did or how many miles you did. And just set a goal like, hey, maybe I want to get 10% higher on my volume. If I'm doing Rockford, maybe set a date before June if your race is in June. VO2 max, if you've measured that, be like, all right, I know what my VO2 max is. I want to improve this by X%. And just putting that number down, hold yourself accountable to it. It's a great way to stay motivated. For me, I always like to improve my fat max. If I'm testing myself, every year, usually I try to do at least one VO2 test on myself. And I want to see, can I get my body to actually burn more body fat as a fuel source? That's what happens when you improve your metabolic efficiency. So you can actually track that. You could do a test and see that. Or lactate. My goal typically over the course of a training season is to see my, what we call it, anaerobic threshold or lactate threshold improve by at least 5 beats, or about 1 beat per month. So if I test myself in January, by May, I should be about 5 beats higher on my anaerobic threshold. And that will allow me to train at higher intensities and still avoid injury risk. So the main things that I would recommend if you're going to set a specific goal, first, and this is what I kind of built my 4-star coaching business around, is hitting these 4 stars. These are the 4 things to do. Use a training plan. So if you haven't gotten a good plan, have something that is very specific and adaptable. Now there's AI-powered training plans, and they tailor every workout based on your individual thresholds, your zones, the environment, so on and so forth. And if you've never done that, let me know. I've got a free 2-month trial of Tri312 and some other tools as well. And then test yourself. Do regular assessments. And again, you don't have to go always to a lab and do testing. Do a test, have a controlled environment. We use the 606 trail and we test from like the same start point, same turnaround point, same finish point. So every time we test and we'd run a 5K outside, we have that same environment. And that's a great way to keep yourself focused. Also spend some time learning, like, whether you're reading books, watching YouTube videos, or get a new, bike gadget, a new bike computer, a new Garmin watch. There's different tools that are very effective at helping you learn how to train smarter. And then last but not least, train with other people. If you look at why did the Norwegians sweep the podium? Those 3 guys trained together for months. And having other people to keep pushing you and keep you accountable is what's going to help you train better. So find those friends that inspire you, and maybe you can inspire them in turn. So now I'm going to turn it over to you guys. We'll kind of wrap up. I'm just curious to see if anyone raced a race this past year that you want to encourage others to maybe think about doing in the year ahead. And maybe let us know, and this will kind of be a segue to maybe the next, if we do a goal setting workshop next time. If you want to share what your goal is, saying it to somebody else is a great way to make yourself a little bit more accountable to it. So if you want to say what race you're doing or what your goal is, and then if you have an accountability BFF, if you have a friend, if you don't have a friend who's going to hold you accountable, we can hold each other accountable. So if you want to share your goal, we will hopefully hold each other accountable going into the new year. So that's pretty much all I have. But shall we go around? And if you want to be on audio, you can use the mic. If not, we'll go around the room and tell us if you have a goal or a race in mind. Shelley?
You gave me this old
I can put her on the spot because she's my wife.
I know. Here, I want this on audio.
Big sigh.
No, exactly. Just wait, buddy.
This is why the work wife is right here.
Any goals? Or you can pass it on if you don't want to.
Yay.
Shelley will go last. And you don't have to do this. This is just optional if you want to commit yourself to your goals for next year.
For sure, my goal is to make hop for next year.
Rockford?
Yeah. After, this is my 3rd year practicing for triathlon, doing some triathlon. Next year I want to do something harder.
Yeah. Yeah, usually in triathlon we get people doing a sprint their first year, then they do the Olympic, and they look at doing the half Ironman and kind of build up. So yeah, doing your first half Ironman is definitely a big goal for the new year. That's awesome.
Yeah, I have been living here in Chicago for 5 years only, but we have a very strong bike group. We used to do Saturday and Sunday mornings very often, right? And they are not doing triathlon, they only do bike, but it's very strong bike. I used to say that they are my coaches because I'm always trying to get in, but yeah, it's a nice group, can help me to motivate me for sure.
Cool.
Good.
Awesome. Anyone else?
Is this on? This is around the time I think about what my goals are, but not necessarily 100% sure. But my goal is to have fun next year. I did my first 70.3 last year, and to get all the training, and I felt like I cut out some of my social training, and it hit me, I think, halfway through the season. So I'm signed up for Skate from Alcatraz, which is simply going to be fun for me. Chicago Tri and maybe Chicago Marathon.
Nice. Yeah, we had, I think, 2 or 3 people do Alcatraz. We're training together, I would recommend get in the lake in May. That's the goal.
I joined a plunge group too, we're gonna be jumping in.
Yeah. Awesome.
Get used to the cold.
Joy, any big goals?
2026 is still loading.
Still in process.
Yeah. The only thing that's in stone officially now is F3 in January, New York City half in March, the Colfax half in May. There might be something else a week after. We don't know yet. Chicago Marathon. I find out actually next week about Berlin.
Oh, yeah.
Thanksgiving. And it looks like I am going to throw in the hat for Honolulu.
Very cool.
And there's going to be a triathlon or two somewhere in there.
It's a lot of half marathons, and yeah, a lot of the world marathon majors have lotteries that are coming due over the next couple of months. So a lot of people are still figuring out their goals for the new year.
Guess my race schedule is pretty set for next year. There's a half marathon in April, half Ironman in June, nationals in August, and then a Ironman California in October. My goals, I just finished my first full Ironman in Maryland this year. I went, looking back on it, I was very, very conservative with the game plan, and talking it over with a couple people, I want to drop the hammer. And the thing of it is, it's not dropping the hammer and not understanding what that means. Is I want to make sure that hammer hits that nail. There's that focus that it's in the zone. It's not an adrenaline zone. It is a just primary focus, and that's where I want to be. And that focus, that game plan helped me in Maryland, understanding what the game plan is, how you need to execute it. Those are the things I really, really felt like I succeeded in this year, at least the last half of the season, because the first half of the season was just crap. But understanding that, and then saying every race that I have, yeah, training may go on a big roller coaster ride, but once we get everything locked down, is executing that race plan. And that's what it's going to be next year. Those are the goals, is to execute that race plan based on the training. And then let's see if we can do that. Not necessarily time-based, but yeah, I would love to go sub 12 at California, but we'll see.
There you go. Yep. Put it out there. Now we're all
You
gonna
said it.
cheer you on and hold you accountable for that goal. That's awesome. Last but not least,
Whew. I previously have done a lot of endurance events, and I've fallen off of that due to various reasons, injury and health. And I don't know. I'm trying to determine if I'm retired from that, or if I can get joy back in doing that. Not you, Joy, but joy. I want joy back.
you want joy and joy back.
I want joy back. So that said, I'm slowly ramping up my runs to get ready for the half three. The F3 in January. So when I get that kind of under my belt, assuming health-wise everything goes okay, and then once I've done that, I will maybe look for a biking event, I think, some gravel event probably, or maybe like a bike camp or something along those natures early in the season, and see if I'm, enjoying it. If I'm not enjoying it, obviously, then I'm obviously going to stay fit. I'm not going to lose that, but I'll probably stick to shorter distances and enjoy that. So that was a long-winded answer, but there's a lot of baggage to unpack there. So I was very happy when I was doing the endurance stuff, but I could have moved on from that.
It's hard when you've done a lot of training, and then if you have one or two steps back to find that new motivation, you have to pick some big audacious goal or something new and exciting to put out there. So this is a good time of year to share ideas with others and start
Deciding
to,
if that's what I want to do, a big audacious goal. I don't know if I want that, honestly.
or a small goal that's just
baby
focused
steps
on
is what
having fun.
That's what I'm doing.
That's why doing something new is always a fun way to look into it.
Yeah.
But
Chris?
good question. Yeah, I don't. I'm still working on my goals as well. I put this up because I know I have to commit myself to sign up for a race. I have not pulled the trigger yet, but I need to register. I did put a page together though for anyone doing Rockford with a bunch of resources on Rockford. So recorded videos and events, and as we get more, we did some course rides last year. We did some course runs on the course, and we'll probably do some virtual rides and other things. So if you're interested in doing Rockford, these are the other races that I have on my tentative schedule. Another new one is the multi-sport national championships has actually just been announced that it'll be in Michigan. So just driving distance from Chicago in May, and that's a whole week of races. They have 2 or 3 races a day for 5 days in a row. I used to do this every year. We did it in Texas a couple of years. It was in Omaha the last couple of years. So the fact that it's in Michigan is exciting. Yep. And so they have a super sprint slide triathlon where you start going down a water slide, which I think, thinking of creating something fun and, not a big, time commitment goal, a super sprint triathlon, I think you could probably do this weekend if you wanted to.
Do a slip and slide at the finish?
That would be an awesome idea. But yeah, you can watch the video. I think USA Triathlon posted a video on their Facebook. Yeah, that's what it is.
Victoria's going to do that one.
But it's organized by Tries for Health. It's the same group that does the Michigan Titanium, the Grand Rapids Triathlon. So they've been doing tries for a while.
How are they going to equalize each lane? I mean,
We'll see. If you watch the video, you'll see how they do that. It's like a time trial start. So they just have 3 people at a time going down. Yeah, so that's a fun one that I think I might be throwing on the schedule. We'll see. They also have relays, like team relays. So if you want to do a team event, you can.
That might be NBA weekend.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that sounds good. So,
Yeah.
The other ones that I'm probably, I don't know, yeah, I think I'm going to try to actually do the full series this year. Leon's Triathlon, Pleasant Prairie, and Chicago are part of the Chicagoland Tri Series. We'll be announcing through Super Tri a whole new challenge for that. You can also get race entries into all 3 races by fundraising for Dare to Try, the Paratriathlon Club. So I'm probably going to be at all of those. And then Milwaukee has the USAT Age Group Nationals for Sprint and Olympic Distance Triathlon. They also announced a change this year. They're going to have a draft legal triathlon on Friday, in addition to the Olympic Tri and the Sprint Tri on Saturday and Sunday. And they're also adding a mixed team relay. So if you gather a couple of your friends, you can do a relay triathlon. So I'll probably be doing all of these as well as one of my goals.
I'm going to have to bring 2 bikes up to Milwaukee.
And then actually these codes are not live yet, but we'll be getting new discount codes for the Chicago Triathlon. So if anyone's interested in doing that. Super Tri just added, now actually there's 8 races in the Super Tri series. They have the Toronto Triathlon, so Canada. They have Chicago Triathlon in Long Beach in the US, as well as Cap-Tex and Kerrville in Texas. We just added New Jersey, the New Jersey State Triathlon. And then in the UK, the Blenheim Palace Triathlon and Toulouse, France. So if you want to travel internationally, you've got the UK, you've got Canada, you've got France, you've got the US, all part of a new series as part of Super Tri. And then if you just want to look for some local fun stuff too, we have a trail run tomorrow morning that Jillian's doing. Universal Soul. We usually get a team discount code for BFF bikes. So these are pretty much every month through the winter time as well. There'll be another one in February. I think there's a couple in the springtime as well.
What's the distance?
They vary. The one tomorrow, I think, there's a 4-mile and an 8-mile option. It's like a 1 or 2 loop course. And it depends. Each one, I think, is they alternate locations and they have slightly different distances.
tomorrow.
I forget. Palos?
Oh, is that the one that I tripped at? That's what I looked at.
And if you want to work on your swim, we do have registration open for the new pool school. I'm actually doing a mini swim clinic this Sunday afternoon if anyone wants to join in. But this is the next big one for our half iron, full iron athletes. It's a 2-day event in February. The one this weekend, I'm going to do a 1:30 and 3 p.m. swim class. Just tell me. I'll give you a link.
Where do you say?
But we're going to actually be organizing more weekend swim clinics throughout the winter time as well, in addition to our usual swim classes. I also coach for Team NAs along with Joy. So if you're looking into entries into pretty much any of the world marathon majors, and Shelly, sorry. And Jillian helps coach as well sometimes. We knew this year we now have Cape Town. We just added the Tokyo Marathon. We have Berlin, Chicago, Sydney, New York Marathon, New York Half Marathon, Chicago Triathlon. And there's group training for all of these. So if you're looking to train with a group, you need that social aspect. This is a fun crew to do it.
Cape Town then in A?
So most of the people, if you didn't hear the story about Cape Town, it was supposed to become a world marathon major next year. But then they had to cancel this year's race, and so they didn't meet their qualification criteria. So it'll be the age group world championships next year, but not an official world marathon major until the year after. So most of our athletes have opted to defer to 2027, but it's still happening next year. We just aren't necessarily.
You still get your star if you do it next year, provisional, right?
Potentially,
That's what they've been saying.
Yeah. So assuming it does become a major, which now like everyone's questioning, like, is it really going to become one? So I'm sure it probably will, but it's in mind. But yeah, if you need training plans too, we have different training plans that we'll be posting. If you're doing any Ironman event, we have an Ironman Tri Club you can join. There's a lot of perks tied into that. You get early registration, and we try to coordinate meetups around Ironman events. So we at Rockford, we did a team dinner the night before, and we try to check in together so your racks are all next to each other. So it's fun when you train with other folks. And yeah, I think I'll wrap it up at that. I was going to mention a few other things, but I'll just do this. We do have Strava groups, so if you want to stay in the loop of anything, there's different Strava clubs. You can find information about upcoming events. So if you're not looped into that, that's a good way to stay up to date with what's going on. But I think that's all I got, so that was a lot. We'll continue to hang out, socialize. If anyone wants to oogle at the time trial bike, or if you have questions, if you want a free trial of a training plan and want to set your goals for next year, I think I have some cards somewhere around here I can hand out.
Did you say in the Norwegian Method where the fun comes in?
Yeah.
That part.
I
Yep.
know.
Just that they train together and they.
Yeah.
That's the fun.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's
but I mean, look at KB.
The specifics are vague.
yeah.
Norwegian.
The-
They go to dance.
They-
They go to ice cream social.
They wear a lederhosen and eat Swedish meatballs.
I was going to potentially, I didn't put it in here, I didn't get the slide in there, but I was going to put a photo of what Gustav Iden did the day after winning the Ironman World Championships. For fun, he went surfing in a, I don't know if it was quite a banana hammock, but it was pretty close to a leopard print Speedo. Yeah, so that, you know, when you,
Europeans do.
yes, it's normal in Kona.
I want to see that.
Thank
you.
For your
Thank you for
banana.
spreading us that.
Now you've got a nice, horrible nightmare you're going to have tonight.
No.
So I do have a question. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. I was just going to say, like, you know, that can be a lot of things to a lot of different people. The main goal is just training with friends, like having fun, whether you do some crazy epic training session where you do something fun and silly, a super slide triathlon. You know, the goal is just do something with others. I call these my methods of motivation. Like I try to have every athlete do all 4 of these things in some way, shape, or form. And under inspiration, the other way I kind of keep people motivated is either, you know, incorporating in some type of charitable aspect, like fundraising for charity, actually gets you to have a more fun experience. It gets you involved in a community. So anything that gets you involved in a community, or bike lead marshaling, you know, just volunteering, giving back. Training doesn't have to be super crazy structured. You can log saddle time in a lot of different creative ways. Do the brewery rides with BFF bikes. You know, there's a
Drinking happens on those rides. Are you stopping and drinking at all the breweries?
Yeah.
Yes.
it's like
Yes.
we're,
That would be nice.
it's
They're
kind
a lot
of
of fun.
like a beer mile on bikes, but non-competitive. You just ride to one brewery, have a beer. Ride to one brewery, have a beer.
Just no pouring the beer in your bento, in your bottle, in your bike.
But speaking of beer miles, we are doing a beer mile in 2 weeks. Yeah, in 2 weeks, I think. No, 2 weeks from now, I think. And there's a non-alcoholic option if you want to do a beer mile with us.
AKA water.
Or seltzer.
But a lot of the pros do that too in Kona. They go to the track the day afterwards and they do a little beer mile.
Athletic brewing.
So you chug a beer, you run a quarter, you chug another beer.
So mine's not
you
that
run
far,
a
so
quarter,
okay, so by
you
quarter.
chug another beer.
Oh, that's like a
You run
Monarch
quarter,
5K.
And you chug another beer, you run
So
that
it's
final
basically a
quarter.
lapper of a track and a
But
bike.
if you throw up, you have to do a penalty lap.
Yeah.
And drink more beer.
Yeah, exactly. And drink more beer.
The other thing too, like the other way to kind of inspire yourself is through gamification. So like for heart rate training, I use the MyZone heart rate monitors. We get points, and at the end of the year, I raffle off prizes. If you do indoor cycling, this time of year, people are looking for things to do because it's getting colder and there's not as much to do. But indoor cycling just takes off. You know, all the pros, you can literally follow the pros on Zwift and other platforms and ride with them. On the Super Tri side, we have MyWhoosh, which is a free virtual cycling platform. And we get the Olympic gold medalists hopping on there. We had Tadej Pogačar leading a group ride on there.
It's David Cole and whatever.
Yep. So at least every month, but really almost every week, there's some type of like virtual ride that you can do. It's just like fun and social, and you get to learn from some of the top athletes in the world. So that's a great way to get into cycling and having fun. But speaking of that, actually, if anyone wants a smart trainer, I see a couple smart trainers right back there. So BFF has some good deals. I know with the holiday, Black Friday coming up, Cyber Monday, there's lots of good deals to be had. So if you want to do some shopping, I know Jillian usually offers we have a discount on Garmin, Form swim goggles, and what else? Wahoo trainers. So if anyone needs to do some shopping, feel free to float around, socialize.
Yeah, Garmin's, if you're looking for a Garmin, I can order whatever you need, get you a discount.
And if you join our 4-star club, you get 25% off on Garmin. Even the new stuff. All right, well, that's all I got for tonight. Thank you, everyone, for joining. And feel free to float around.